Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chantel and today I'm going to be talking about some movies, well, a movie. So this is the month of October, as I'm sure everyone is aware. It is spooky season and I'm going to be watching a lot of horror movies this month for a few different reasons. The main one is that my local university affiliated Cinematheque has the past few years done a month-long what they call Fright Fest, and which they show a lot of horror movies all month long. And this year in particular, this is I believe the third year they've done it, they have an incredibly good lineup of movies. That, combined with the fact that the Criterion Channel also has some real bangers on there this month, and that TCM, as per usual, is also doing a lot of really great horror-themed programming in the month of October, means that I'm going to be watching a lot of horror movies. And I thought that it might be a good idea to do some little video reviews of some of these films. So some of these films for me are going to be rewatches. I'm going to talk about some of my favorite horror movies of all time that have been my favorites for a long time. Some of these films are going to be first-time watches for me, and so I'm just going to be reviewing some films that I'm seeing for the first time. They're going to be a variety of sort of subgenres within horror and a variety of time periods, some older, some more recent, depending on what I am able to catch in screenings and on TCM and on the Criterion Channel. There's going to be, you know, some several different kinds of films and several different eras of films, I think, represented in these little video reviews. So today I'm going to talk about the first film that I was able to catch this month at my local Cinematheque, and that is Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Now, this film definitely falls into the category of a film that I've watched many times and is one of my favorites of all time. This isn't even the first time I've seen it on the big screen. I try to catch this movie on the big screen whenever and wherever I get the chance because I think it is so good and it is so enjoyable. I have such a good time watching it. So if you're not familiar with this film, I think I want to start out with saying that this film is, in many ways, the most accurate adaptation to the original source material that has ever been put on film. Most of the time, Dracula adaptations make a lot of changes to the source material. They do a lot of adaptational work. They're often cutting characters, combining characters, setting it in a different time period, messing around with it in different ways. Doing lots of different things. Like the original 1931 Dracula, directed by Todd Browning and starring Bela Lugosi, was actually based more on a stage play version than the actual novel itself, which is reflected in that film. It's a very fun film. It's a very enjoyable film, but it is definitely not what we would consider to be a faithful adaptation of the novel. This film, as I said, from 1992, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, is quite faithful. It is set in 1897, which is, of course, the year that Dracula was published. It does not cut out or combine any of the main characters. All of our characters are intact and basically as they are in the book, even down to Lucy's three suitors, Arthur, Dr. Seward, and the Texan, Quincy. They're all there, and they all have their parts to play, and they all do what they do in the book. Even much of the structure of the book is retained in this film. As you may or may not be aware, Dracula is an epistolary novel. It is told entirely through diaries, journal entries, letters, newspaper clippings, things like that. And that epistolary structure is actually retained in this film such that we have a lot of voiceovers. We have a lot of people reading from their own journals, telling us the story, reading from their letters, that kind of thing. So it's very fun to watch that in that sense. Though, of course, this film does still take a number of liberties with the source material, but these are liberties that I generally quite enjoy. The biggest liberty that it takes is that, of course, it turns the character of Dracula into a tragic anti-hero. And to me, that is so fun, because I think probably one of the weakest aspects of Bram Stoker's novel, for real, like, in general, right, is that Dracula is a pretty one-dimensional villain. We never get his perspective in the book. We get the perspectives of most of the other characters at some point in the novel Dracula, but we never get Dracula's perspective. We never really understand why he's doing anything that he's doing, except that he just wants fresh blood, right? He just wants to come to the modern world and kill modern people for their fresh modern blood. But Coppola's film takes Dracula and turns him into this romantic, tragic figure who's lost his love, and then in the wake of that loss curses God and thus damns himself, right? And he's tortured, you know? And Gary Oldman, who plays Dracula in this film, is really good at playing both of the sort of monstrous bestial side of Dracula and this sort of tortured, romantic, tragic hero that the film has sort of made him out to be. And that is a wonderful, to me, that's a wonderful contrast, right? In some ways, I think this does to Dracula what, what has always been true of Frankenstein's creature, right? Which is that it doesn't reduce the monstrousness of the things that he does, right? He does terrible things, and the movie makes no bones about that, but it does make him a lot more sympathetic, and a lot more tragic, and it's very lovely, right? Everything about this movie is kind of excessive. It's full of operatic bombast. Everything from the musical score by Wojciech Kilar it's incredible. There's a lot of choral music in there, which really adds a lot, I think, to the power and the drama of what's going on. The costumes by Aiko Ishikuo. I'll get her name up on the screen. She won an Oscar for the costumes for this film, and with very good reason. These costumes are incredible. She was allowed to really just sort of let her imagination fly, especially with Dracula's costumes, which are absolutely iconic. Especially that incredibly long robe, the red robe that he wears sort of in the beginning of the film in the castle is amazing. And the wig work and the makeup work is absolutely incredible as well. I will say some of the visuals look a little bit dated, even for a film from 1992. That is very deliberate in this case. Coppola wanted to primarily have visual effects that could have been done in 1897. So the vast majority of the visual effects in this film are what we call in-camera effects. There's a lot of matte paintings used. There's even there's sequences that are done with essentially shadow puppets and lots of superposition of images over each other and things like that. Very little digital work. It's pretty much all practical. It's really fun to watch all of these techniques on screen being used by someone who knows them and can do them very skillfully. The cast is also just amazing. As I said, Gary Oldman plays Dracula in this film, and he is incredible. This is, I think, the only Dracula adaptation I've seen that really does a good job of capturing both the monstrous aspects of Dracula, but also the charming, charismatic side of Dracula. Both of those things, right? I think most adaptations do one or the other significantly better, This one really effectively does both, and there are times when he's really scary. Again, sometimes he's just like a giant bat creature, or a wolf man, and or an old man with long fingers and long claws, and sometimes he's just really sexy, and the film transitions beautifully between both of those things. Anthony Hopkins is absolutely unhinged in this film as Van Helsing. He's, in my opinion, the best Van Helsing that's ever been committed to film, by a long mile. Like, you can argue about whether, like, Bela Lugosi is visually iconic as Dracula. Christopher Lee really put his own spin on the character, and Gary Oldman does something else as well that's iconic and very visually affecting and emotionally resonant. But really, I mean, there is no other Van Helsing but Anthony Hopkins for me. He is insane. He moves from one moment to from intense sincerity and seriousness to, like, he's humping people's legs and demanding food and talking casually about dismembering corpses. It's crazy and so fun to watch him just chew scenery. Winona Ryder is an absolutely stunning Mina Harker, and the chemistry that she and Gary Oldman have on screen is really, really something to watch. Keanu Reeves is, in my opinion, I think his really terrible British accent as Jonathan Harker just makes it more charming in some ways, but he is arguably the weakest performance in the film. But if you want to see a very young Keanu Reeves trying to emote around a very bad British accent, this is definitely the movie for you. We also have standout performances from the likes of Cary Elwes and Richard E. Grant and Tom Waits. So, this is a star-studded production. This is one of those movies that, there's a lot of blood. There's a lot of boobs. It really is a full-on, visceral, sensual, erotic experience that is kind of a fever dream almost, and it's beautiful to watch. The color grading, the lighting, the sets, the costumes are incredible. This film, one of the biggest parts of the budget on this film was simply the costumes, and you can see the money on screen in the costumes, and it's really gorgeous to watch. I'm envious of all of the people who got to wear any of those costumes, because they're just absolutely stunning. But you really do have to experience it. It's an incredible, visually stunning, emotional roller coaster of a gothic tragic romance, with a lot of, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of dismemberments, there's a lot of nudity. It's definitely an R-rated movie from the 1990s. So don't expect this to be, this is not your grandma's Dracula. But it's very fun, it's very sexy, it's very creepy. And if you are at all into the gothic vibes, this movie is absolutely for you. Frankly, I cannot say enough about Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is my favorite Francis Ford Coppola movie. That's probably a controversial opinion, but it is. It really is. And you just kind of have to watch it to believe it. In fact, I may just watch it again after I finish recording this video, because just talking about this movie makes me want to sit down and watch it. It's just that much fun. It's not hard to find. You can rent it or purchase it on Amazon Video, Amazon Prime Video. It's available on DVD and Blu-ray. It's not difficult to find. But if you do get a chance to watch it on the big screen with a crowd of with a good appreciative audience, highly recommend that. I've seen it, again, as I said, a couple of times on the big screen, and it's always just incredibly fun to watch with a large appreciative crowd of people, particularly when Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing says something like, you know, Dr. Seward, I need you to prepare your autopsy knives. And Seward says, really? She's just, you know, she just died so horribly. Why are we going to do that? You don't want to do an autopsy on her. Oh, no, 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 nothing like that. I just want to chop off her head and cut out her heart. So that's Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. I'm going to be watching a number of other horror and horror adjacent films in October, and I will do some more video reviews of those films as we go. I hope you enjoy this. If you haven't watched Dracula, you should. It's worth your time. I have watched and enjoyed many adaptations of Dracula. I like many of them. There's a lot of really fun ones, but I think this one is probably my favorite. So that's what I have to say about that. And let me know in the comments below if you agree with me, if you think it's actually a bad movie. Maybe don't say that. I'll just be mad if you do, but whatever. Like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.